I always knew my place. No matter what I did, no matter how hard I tried, I was never the favorite. That was Ethan, my older brother, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. While I worked twice as hard just to be noticed, he was handed praise on a silver platter. If he got an A on a test, my parents would beam with pride. If I got the same grade, barely a nod. It was like I was always standing in his shadow, waiting for a spotlight that would never turn my way. Dinners at home were the same routine. My mother fussing over Ethan, my father telling him how proud he was, while I sat there, invisible. "Ethan is so smart," they'd say. "Ethan is going to do great things." As if I wasn't even in the room. I learned to smile through it, to swallow my frustration. What else could I do? No matter how much I craved their approval, I knew it wasn't mine to have. But the real betrayal didn't come until senior year. The night Ethan and I both got accepted into college. I remember sitting at the table, nervous but excited, finally ready to have that one conversation that could change everything. I asked about my tuition, hopeful that maybe, just maybe, they would finally see me. My father barely looked up from his plate. "You're a girl," he said, as if that alone was the answer. "One day you'll marry, and your husband will take care of you." I couldn't breathe. My mother nodded in agreement, not even sparing me a glance. "Ethan is the man of the house," she added. "He needs an education to support his future family." I felt something inside me snap. My dreams, my hard work, everything I had fought for, it meant nothing to them. But as I sat there, burning with humiliation, something else took root inside me. A quiet, unshakable promise. I would prove them wrong. And one day, I would make them regret ever doubting me. I didn't cry that night. I didn't beg. I just sat there, listening as they talked about Ethan's future like it was the only one that mattered. My hands were clenched under the table, nails digging into my palms, but my face, completely still. If they wouldn't invest in me, I would invest in myself. If they thought I would roll over and accept my fate, they were wrong. Ethan, of course, didn't say a word. Why would he? He had never known what it felt like to be overlooked, to be told his dreams didn't matter. He just kept eating, oblivious, probably already picturing himself at some fancy college party, paid for with my parents' money. It wasn't his fault, not entirely. He had been raised to believe the world owed him something, that I owed him something, but I didn't, and I never would. That night, I lay awake in my bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. They thought my future depended on a man. They thought my worth was tied to whoever I married. It was almost laughable. No, I decided then and there, I would build my own future, without them, without their money, without their approval. And one day they would look at me and realize exactly what they had lost. The next morning, I walked downstairs and saw my parents fussing over Ethan's college applications. My mother was already making a list of what he'd need: his dorm decor, his books, his monthly allowance. My father was on the phone with the bank, finalizing the transfer for his tuition. They didn't even notice me standing there. I could have said something. I could have screamed, demanded, begged for the same treatment, but I didn't, because I knew the truth. They had already made their choice and I wasn't a part of it. So I just watched, memorizing every word, every dismissive glance. This moment would stay with me forever, the final proof of where I stood in this family. That was the day I stopped trying to earn their love. If they couldn't see my worth, I wouldn't waste another second proving it to them. My path was clear now. I was on my own, and that was fine. I would find a way. I would work, study, push myself beyond my limits. And one day, I would stand in front of them, not as the forgotten daughter, but as the woman they had underestimated. And when that day came, they would regret every choice they had made. The first year was brutal. No safety net, no cushion to fall back on, just me, my determination, and a bank account that was always dangerously close to empty. While Ethan packed his bags for his fully funded college experience, I scrambled to figure out how I was going to survive. Tuition, rent, food, it all fell on me. There were no weekend trips home, no care packages filled with home-cooked meals. My parents had made it clear I was on my own. So I worked hard. I took on any job I could find: waitressing, tutoring, even cleaning offices late at night when everyone else was asleep. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. Some nights, I had to choose between a meal or a bus ride home. I learned to stretch a single meal across 2 days, to drink water when my stomach ached from hunger. But I never complained. Complaining wouldn't change anything. Complaining wouldn't get me to where I needed to be. Meanwhile, Ethan was living the life I was supposed to have. I saw glimpses of it through social media. Pictures of frat parties, expensive dinners, weekend getaways, all paid for by the parents who had once told me there was no money for my education. It should have hurt. Maybe it did. But more than anything, it fueled me. Every picture, every update was another reminder of why I couldn't fail. I wasn't just trying to survive anymore. I was planning. Every sleepless night, every skipped meal, every humiliating moment when I had to count my coins just to afford a cup of coffee, it was all leading to something. I wasn't just going to prove them wrong. I was going to make them regret ever doubting me. The exhaustion was constant, settling deep into my bones like a weight I could never put down. But I didn't stop. I couldn't. While my classmates went out for drinks after exams, I clocked into my next shift. While they complained about essays, I balanced textbooks on my lap during my lunch break at work. I watched them stress over midterms like their world was ending, while I quietly juggled survival itself. And all the while, Ethan drifted through life without a care. He partied through semesters, failed classes only to have our parents pay for retakes, wasted money on things he didn't even appreciate. I heard the stories through mutual friends, saw the proof in his posts. Ethan lounging in designer clothes, laughing in bars, throwing money around like it would never run out. And why would it? He never had to earn it. I used to think that one day he'd understand, that life would catch up to him. But the more I saw, the more I realized Ethan would never have to struggle. Our parents would always catch him before he fell. Meanwhile, I had no choice but to keep climbing, alone, with nothing but sheer willpower keeping me going. But something changed in me during those endless shifts and sleepless nights. I wasn't just angry anymore, I was strategic. Every sacrifice I made, every hardship I endured, it all became part of something bigger. A plan. I wasn't just working toward a degree, I was working toward something far greater. I wasn't going to beg for their approval, I was going to take back my power. And when the time was right, they would see exactly what they had lost. The breaking point came one night when I was walking home from work, my feet aching, my stomach hollow from skipping meals. A notification lit up my phone, another photo from Ethan. He was at some expensive resort, drink in hand, flashing the kind of carefree grin that only came from knowing you'd never have to worry about a thing. The caption? Living my best life. Family support. I stopped in the middle of the sidewalk, staring at the screen, cold rage crawling up my spine. That money, those luxuries, those were things I had been denied. Things I had to bleed for while he wasted them without a second thought. It wasn't fair. But then again, life had never been fair to me. So I would have to make my own justice. That was the night I solidified my plan. Success wasn't just about proving them wrong anymore. It was about making them see, making them feel what they had done. They had built Ethan up and left me behind. They had poured everything into him, believing he would be their future. I would show them just how badly they had miscalculated. I wouldn't take shortcuts. I wouldn't ask for help. I would build everything with my own hands, and when I finally had the power to decide their fate, I would make sure they understood exactly what it felt like to be discarded. I didn't just want to succeed. I wanted them to regret. Graduation day. The moment I had spent years fighting for, sacrificing for. As I stood in my cap and gown, the weight of the past pressing against my chest, I didn't feel relief. I felt something sharper, something colder, vindication. I had done it, without their help, without their money, without the endless safety nets they had wrapped around Ethan. I looked out into the crowd, scanning for familiar faces. My classmates had their families cheering, clapping, waving signs with their names. My family wasn't there. Of course they weren't. As far as they knew, I was still struggling, still barely scraping by. I had never told them how well I was doing, never given them the satisfaction of knowing where I stood. Let them believe I was failing. Let them think I was still beneath them. The truth would come soon enough. As I walked across the stage to accept my diploma, a slow, deliberate smile crept onto my face. I wasn't just graduating, I was graduating at the top of my class. I had secured a high-paying job before even leaving campus. I was on my way to a future they never thought I could have. Ethan, meanwhile, had barely scraped by. I knew this because I had kept tabs on him, just as I knew our parents had thrown thousands more into his tuition just to make sure he crossed the finish line. He had a degree, but no real prospects, no work ethic, no drive. And for the first time, I wondered if they were starting to regret it. If, even in some quiet corner of their minds, they were beginning to see the cracks in the golden sun they had built. The moment I stepped into the real world, I hit the ground running. My job was demanding. Long hours, high expectations, cutthroat competition. But compared to what I had already survived, it was nothing. I had spent years fighting for my place. I wasn't about to slow down now. While I was climbing, Ethan was sinking. The difference between us had never been clearer. He expected success to find him, the way everything else always had. But the world outside our parents' bubble didn't care about his last name. It didn't care about the money they had thrown at his failures. Employers wanted results, discipline, drive, all the things Ethan had never been forced to develop. I heard whispers from home, my mother complaining that Ethan was having a hard time, my father making excuses for him. They still didn't blame him, not really. They blamed the world. The job market. The professors who didn't understand his potential. It was never Ethan's fault. It never had been. And me? I remained silent. I never reached out, never offered help. As far as they knew, I was still struggling, still paying for my own mistakes, as they had once called them. I let them believe it. I wanted them to. Because one day, when the moment was right, I would show them exactly what their choices had cost them. I built myself in silence. No flashy announcements, no social media updates, no desperate attempts to prove my worth. I let them believe whatever they wanted while I kept climbing. Promotion after promotion, raise after raise, I carved out the life they never thought I could have. The kind of life they had handed to Ethan on a silver platter, only he had wasted it. I knew the moment would come, the inevitable turning point. My parents had spent years investing in Ethan, covering for him, making excuses. But I could already see the cracks forming. The job he half-heartedly secured didn't last. He had never learned how to work, how to push himself. And the world, unlike our parents, had no patience for his failures. Meanwhile, I was making more money in a year than they had ever imagined. I had stability, power, control. And yet, I never once called them. I never flaunted my success. I wanted them to feel it, to realize it on their own. To look at Ethan, struggling despite everything they had given him, and wonder, did we bet on the wrong child? I wasn't in a rush. This wasn't about revenge. It was about the slow burn. I wanted the weight of their mistakes to settle, heavy and undeniable. And when they finally came to me, desperate and regretful, I would be ready. The call came on a quiet evening. I was in my apartment, my own place, fully paid for, decorated exactly the way I had always imagined when I was scraping by. The life I had built for myself was nothing like the one they had planned for me. It was better. And now, finally, they needed me. I let the phone ring a few extra times before answering. My mother's voice was hesitant, careful in a way it had never been before. "Lena, sweetheart, how have you been?" The forced warmth made my stomach tighten with amusement. I could almost hear it, the struggle of pretending, of shaping her words just right, as if she wasn't about to ask for something. I didn't make it easy. I let her talk, filling the silence with nervous laughter, small talk, fake concern about my life. And then finally she said it. "Your father and we've hit a rough patch. Ethan, he's had some setbacks." Setbacks. That was a nice way to say he's bleeding us dry. They had spent their whole lives making sure Ethan never fell, and now, after all that effort, they were the ones crashing. And me? I was the one standing tall. The irony would have been laughable if it wasn't so predictable. I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence stretch between us. My mother hated silence. It made her uncomfortable, forced her to acknowledge things she didn't want to. A rough patch? I finally echoed, my voice calm, detached. That's surprising. You always said Ethan would take care of everything. She let out a nervous laugh, but I could hear the strain behind it. Oh, you know how life is, sweetheart. Sometimes things don't go as planned. No, their plan didn't go as planned. My plan, however, was unfolding perfectly. Then, the real ask came. Your father and I were thinking, maybe you could help, just a little, until things settle down. The words help your family were unspoken but heavily implied. For years I had been the one cast aside, but now that their golden son had failed them, suddenly I was family again. Suddenly I mattered. I kept my voice neutral. Help how? She hesitated. Well, Ethan is in a tough spot right now. He's between jobs, and your father and I, we've put so much into making sure he has the right opportunities, but you know how hard things can be. I knew exactly how hard things could be. I had lived it, and they had never once cared. But I wasn't going to refuse right away. No, that would be too easy. I had waited years for this moment. I was going to savor it. I let out a thoughtful hum, as if I were actually considering it. It sounds serious, I said, keeping my tone even. Maybe we should talk in person. How about dinner? My treat. The relief in my mother's voice was instant. Oh, sweetheart, that would be wonderful. I'll tell your father and Ethan. We can all sit down and— Yes, I interrupted smoothly. I'd love to see all of you. It's been so long. I could practically hear the pride in her voice, the triumph. She thought she had won. She thought she had reeled me back in, that I would fold the way I always had when I was younger. What she didn't realize was that this wasn't an act of reconciliation. It was the final stage of my plan. I carefully selected the restaurant, a high-end place with soft lighting and an expensive menu, the kind of setting that would make them believe I had truly forgiven them. I wanted them to walk in feeling hopeful, to think that maybe, just maybe, they still had some control over me. They would come expecting a lifeline. Instead, they would walk away with nothing. This was not a dinner to mend wounds. This was the moment I would show them, without a doubt, that their golden son was nothing more than a failed investment. The night of the dinner, I arrived early. I wanted to be the one waiting, the one in control. I took my seat at a private table near the back, the kind reserved for people who mattered. The restaurant was elegant. Soft candlelight, polished wood, hushed conversations murmuring over glasses of aged wine. A place that screamed success. A place I knew they never expected me to belong. When they arrived, my mother's face lit up in relief. My father, always the stoic one, softened just a little. And Ethan? He looked the same, entitled, clueless, carrying himself with that easy arrogance that had been drilled into him since birth. He sat across from me, looking around the restaurant as if he belonged there, as if his presence alone made him important. It's so good to see you, my mother gushed, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. I let her. Let them have their illusion for just a little longer. The waiter came, and I ordered without hesitation, an expensive wine, an entree that cost more than I used to make in a shift. My parents hesitated, scanning the menu, suddenly aware of the prices. I smiled to myself. Let them feel that discomfort. Let them taste, just for a second, what it was like to wonder if you could afford something. They didn't realize it yet, but they were already losing. Dinner started with small talk. Forced, awkward, an act of pretending we were a normal family. My mother asked about my job with feigned curiosity, like she hadn't spent years pretending I didn't exist. My father nodded stiffly, pretending to be impressed, as if my success had anything to do with them. Ethan barely paid attention, swirling his drink, already bored, and then, finally, they got to the point. We're so proud of you, my mother said, voice gentle, careful. You've done so well for yourself. I let the words settle, waiting for the turn. It came fast. And well, things have been a little difficult for us lately. She sighed dramatically, glancing at Ethan. Your brother has been struggling to find the right opportunities. You know how it is these days, the economy, the job market, it's just been so unfair to him. I nearly laughed. Unfair? My father cleared his throat. We were thinking that maybe, just for a little while, you could help out. Family supports family, after all. There it was, the moment they had been leading up to. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table, my fingers clasped together. Help? I repeated, feigning confusion. What exactly are you asking me to do? My mother's smile wavered, just slightly. Well, Ethan needs a little time to get back on his feet, and we thought maybe since you're doing so well you could, lend a hand. I tilted my head. You mean financially? Silence. A beat too long. Then, my father exhaled. Yes. Ethan, still swirling his drink, didn't even look at me. It's not a big deal, he muttered. You can afford it. That was it. No gratitude, no shame, just expectation. As if it were obvious, as if my success, my hard-earned success, was theirs for the taking. I smiled, slow, cold, because now it was my turn. I set my glass down carefully, letting the weight of the moment stretch. They were waiting for my answer, expecting the outcome to go their way, because it always had. Because I had always been the afterthought, the expendable one, the one they believed would never amount to anything. I let out a soft breath, then spoke. You invested everything in Ethan, I said, my voice steady, deliberate. Every dollar, every opportunity, every ounce of support, and he gave you nothing in return. I looked at my brother then, watching the flicker of irritation cross his face, but he didn't interrupt. He wouldn't dare, not now. My mother's smile was tight, uneasy. Sweetheart, we never meant to. I held up a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. You left me to struggle, to fight for everything on my own, and I did. My gaze hardened. Now I'm the only one who could save you, but I won't. The silence at the table was suffocating. My father's jaw clenched, his pride keeping him from begging outright. My mother's eyes were glassy, her mind scrambling for another angle, another way to manipulate me. And Ethan finally looked up, eyes narrowing, disbelief coloring his expression. You're seriously going to let your family suffer? He scoffed. After everything they've done for you? I laughed. A quiet, humorless sound. Everything they've done for me? I repeated, shaking my head. You mean nothing? The years of neglect? The blatant favoritism? I leaned back, exhaling slowly. No, Ethan, I'm giving them exactly what they gave me. I reached into my purse, pulled out enough cash to cover the meal, and set it on the table. This is the only thing you'll ever get from me. I stood, smoothing my dress, feeling nothing but lightness in my chest. No regret, no hesitation. Just certainty. I had won, and as I walked out of the restaurant, leaving them behind, I didn't look back, not even once.